My son looked straight at me. His voice was low, rushed. Then he said one sentence that made the entire summer afternoon in the Hamptons freeze in place. "Dad, Mom, please understand. There's no room inside anymore. You can eat outside in the hallway." I stood still. Behind him was the wedding hall glowing with light. Round tables still empty. Tablecloths smooth and untouched, as if they were waiting for someone. I didn't argue. I only wondered, when did the people who gave birth to him become the ones with no seat? Before I go on, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Tap like, and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. I read every single one, because maybe right here, you understand the feeling. Standing in front of an open door that somehow isn't meant for you. And from that moment, everything began. I took one more step away from the doorway of the grand hall. The light inside spilled into the hallway like an invitation meant for everyone, except us. The music played steadily, not too loud, just loud enough to cover moments like this. Moments that didn't quite belong. I stood there, shoulders straight, my hand gripping the suit jacket I had carefully pressed early that morning. Luna stood beside me, her back slightly curved from exhaustion, yet she still held on to that familiar smile, the one she had used her whole life to patch over the cracks in our family. Levi didn't look at us for long. After that short sentence, he turned back inside, toward the partners, the friends, and the bride's family gathered around the white floral stage. I heard someone call his name. The voice was eager. Levi quickened his pace as if afraid he might be pulled back by the two people standing out here in the hallway. I didn't blame him right then. I told myself maybe the guest list really was mixed up. Maybe the hotel miscalculated. Maybe there were just too many people today. I had grown used to finding reasons to protect him. As parents, sometimes that feels easier than facing the truth. But then, I looked through the half-open door. At the far end of the hall, beyond the large tables near the stage, there were still a few round tables not fully filled. Chairs neatly pushed in. No one sitting there. I counted quickly in my head. Each table could easily fit 2 more people. No one would have to stand. No one would be pushed outside. No one would have to eat in the hallway. I turned to look at Luna. She wasn't looking inside. She was staring down at her beige high heels. Old ones. I knew her feet hurt. We had traveled nearly 3 hours to get here, starting early that morning. In the car, Luna had told me she wanted to look her best today. "It's our child's day," she said. I remember it clearly. A server walked by with a tray of glasses. He glanced at us, nodded politely, and asked, "Would you like me to bring some food out here for you?" The question was gentle. No malice in it. But it placed us somewhere else. Not the groom's parents. Just guests waiting. Or worse. People without a place in that perfect picture. Luna opened her mouth to speak, then stopped. She nodded. So did I. We moved closer to the glass wall, where the afternoon sunlight slanted through the white curtains. From inside, I heard laughter. The clinking of glasses, the rapid clicks of cameras. A wedding carefully arranged where every detail had its place, except us. I thought about the years when Levi was small. How he used to sit on my shoulders watching fireworks on Independence Day. How he once fell asleep at my desk when I had to bring work home. I didn't tell those memories to anyone. I just stood there remembering. Like an old habit. Luna gently squeezed my hand. I knew she was trying to comfort me like she always did. "It's okay," she whispered, very softly. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, but because I was afraid that if I spoke, my voice would break. A young couple walked past us, dressed neatly. They glanced at us, then looked inside. The look was brief, but enough. Here, image mattered more than connection. Here, everyone was placed where they supposedly belonged. Time moved slower than usual. I don't know how long we stood there. Maybe just a few minutes. But in a hallway with music and laughter only steps away. Time flows differently. I didn't walk in. I didn't call Levi back. I stood there as an observer, watching the sun I once thought was the center of my life. Now the center of a different world. A world where Luna and I no longer had a seat. One simple question echoed in my mind, heavy and unavoidable. If on the most important day of his life we were meant to stand in the hallway, then for the rest of his life, where would we stand? I didn't look for an answer just yet. I stayed still, letting that question quietly open another door inside me. A door I never thought I would have to open. until that summer afternoon. I thought standing in the hallway was the deepest level of awkwardness. I was wrong. It didn't end there. It was only beginning to take shape. Another staff member approached us. This time, a young woman in a black uniform. She looked us over from head to toe, her eyes lingering a moment too long on my shoes. Then she spoke polite but distant. "Could you please stand a bit closer to this side? This area needs to stay clear for staff movement later." I nodded out of instinct. Luna stepped closer to the wall. We made ourselves smaller, as if our very presence was interfering with a system already carefully designed. No one introduced us to anyone. No one mentioned that we were the groom's parents. In that space, identity didn't come from truth. It came from where you were allowed to stand. Sounds began drifting out from the hall. The sound system hadn't been adjusted for the hallway. The music rose and fell, mixed with broken pieces of conversation. Clear enough to hear, but never complete. I wasn't trying to listen, but some words find their way to you anyway. "Levi, move a little to the left." "Yes, that frame's better." Sienna's voice. Calm, calculated. I looked through the crack in the door again. Levi stood at the center back straight, smiling a kind of smile I had never seen at home. That smile was meant for the camera, not for family. Then I heard my name, not loud, but clear enough. "Just leave them out there." Levi's voice. I recognized it immediately, even though it had been a long time since he spoke to me in that tone. "Dad's suit looks too old. It won't photograph well. Have them stand in the hallway. It keeps things clean, easier for pictures." There was no anger, no irritation, just a decision made lightly, the way someone rearranges an item that no longer fits the layout. I didn't turn to look at Luna. I knew if I did, I'd see what she was trying to hide. She stood straight, but her hand grew colder in mine. A tray of food was brought out, a few appetizers placed on a small table by the hallway. No invitation, just set down. A task completed. I didn't touch it. Neither did Luna. We stood there in front of food, without feeling like we were meant to eat. I opened the gift bag I had carried since leaving the house that morning. I had held it carefully all day like something fragile. Inside was a thin, light brown folder. I had imagined giving it to Levi in a quiet moment away from everyone else. I had thought too much, for someone who hadn't thought of us at all. I took the folder out. The papers were neat, carefully arranged. The deed to the house in Florida. The house we had just bought with the last of our savings. We had told each other it would be the starting gift for our son's new life. A foundation, something to stand on. I looked at the name of the recipient. Levi. Clear. No mistake. In that moment, I didn't feel angry. I felt empty, as if I had just realized I was trying to place a brick into a house whose owner didn't want us inside. I folded the folder back up. Carefully, slowly. I didn't want anyone to see it. Not out of shame, but because I understood this gift no longer belonged to this moment. Laughter inside the hall grew louder. Maybe it was time for the toast. I heard cheers, applause. Everything was moving according to plan. A perfect wedding. No room for details that disturbed the image. A man standing nearby turned to me and asked, "Do you work here?" A simple question. Ordinary, but it cut clean and precise. I shook my head. He nodded and didn't ask more. That was enough for me to understand how I was being seen. Luna spoke softly. Very softly. "Maybe we should go home early." I looked at her. Her eyes were no longer searching for anything. They were asking for permission. I nodded. We didn't tell anyone. We didn't say goodbye. We didn't draw attention. We walked out through a side exit where the light slowly faded. The music behind us continued, steady and uninterrupted. Our leaving didn't disrupt a single beat of the celebration. When the door closed behind us, I realized I had been holding my breath. I inhaled, slowly, not to calm myself, but to confirm something with painful clarity. I had just seen a truth I had avoided for many years. Levi didn't change today. Today, I simply stopped being blind. The parking lot behind the hotel was strangely quiet. Yellow lights spilled onto the concrete, stretching the shadows of the two of us. I opened the car door for Luna. She sat down slowly, letting out a long breath, as if something heavy and invisible had finally been set down. I took the driver's seat and closed the door. The moment it shut, the sounds of the celebration in the distance were cut off. Silence rushed in. Clear. Cold. I didn't start the engine right away. I placed the gift bag on the back seat. The folder inside was still there. I knew I wasn't just carrying documents anymore. I was carrying a decision that hadn't been named yet. Luna looked out the window. "Are you okay?" she asked. Her voice was gentle, like she was afraid of touching something fragile. "I'm okay," I said. It wasn't reassurance. It was a temporary confirmation. We left the parking lot and followed the coastal road. The sky was still bright. Summer here holds onto daylight longer than I expected. I drove slowly, not because the road was difficult, but because I needed time to sort through what had just broken apart in my mind. Luna didn't say anything else. She understood my silence. We've lived together long enough to know when to leave someone alone with their thoughts. A fast food place appeared along the road. Bright sign. Simple. I turned in without asking. Luna looked at me, then nodded. We parked and walked inside. No one looked at us with questions. No one needed to know who we were. We were just two people who needed a meal. We ordered 2 burgers, 2 drinks. I chose a table by the window. When I sat down, I realized how tired my legs were. Luna set her purse down, slipped off her heels, and gently rubbed her ankle. I looked at her and saw a kind of exhaustion she didn't need to hide. I took out my phone, not to check messages. I opened the camera. Luna looked at me, surprised. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I want to record this moment," I said. That's all. I didn't adjust the angle. I didn't fix the lighting. I just placed the phone on the table facing the two of us. Behind us was the glass window. Outside, cars still passed by. I spoke slowly, my voice steady. I didn't complain. I didn't explain too much. I only said what was happening. That today was my son's wedding day. That the reception was beautiful. And that there was no place for the parents there. That here in a roadside diner there was a place to sit, to breathe, to eat a proper meal. I ended with a wish. Not sarcastic, not bitter. Just a wish with enough distance to be honest. I posted the video with a short caption. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't name the hotel. I didn't need to. I knew the people who needed to see it would see it. We ate in silence. The burgers weren't special, but they were hot, and they were served to us like to anyone else. I noticed that more than the taste. My phone vibrated softly. Then again. Then it wouldn't stop. I didn't check it right away. I finished my food, wiped my hands. When I finally picked up the phone, the screen was filled with notifications, comments, shares, private messages. I read slowly. Not because I was emotional, but because I wanted to understand. There were people I didn't know, and names I recognized. Business partners who had mentioned Levi before, who had eaten dinner at our house, who had talked about family values and trust. Questions began to appear. Not directly, but clearly enough. Is this true? What happened? Are those the groom's parents? I set the phone down. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Truth, once placed in the right light, knows how to move on its own. Luna looked at me. Do you think... We went too far, I shook my head. No, I said. I only said what happened. We sat there a little longer. Outside, the sky began turning a soft shade of orange. I thought about the wedding hall at that moment. The party was still going on, but I knew something inside that room had shifted. Not because of me, but because questions had been planted. My phone vibrated again. This time, it was a call. Levi's name appeared on the screen. I looked at it, then placed the phone face down on the table. I didn't answer, not out of anger, but because I knew that right now no words would land where they should. We stood up and left the diner. I drove on toward the hotel where we had booked a room for the night. On the way, I felt something unfamiliar. Relief, not because I had done something, but because I had stopped pretending everything was fine. That night, lying in bed, my phone kept vibrating. I turned it off. In the dark, I stared at the ceiling. I thought about the house in Florida, about the folder in the gift bag, about what I had given, and what no one had ever asked if I wanted to keep giving. I didn't make a decision that night, but I knew one door had closed, and another one was slowly opening, quietly, without anger, without noise, just with clarity. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, not because I couldn't sleep, but because my mind had finished sorting everything out during the night. When someone has spent a lifetime as an engineer, they're not good at showing emotion, but they know exactly when a system is no longer safe to keep running. I sat at the small table by the hotel window. The sunlight came in evenly steady and calm. Luna was still asleep. Her face looked more peaceful than it had the afternoon before. I didn't want to wake her with long explanations. Some decisions, if they require too much explaining, simply aren't ready yet. I opened my bag and took out the folder. I read through every page again, not because I doubted the contents, but because I needed to confirm one simple thing. Everything was in my name. The apartment Levi was living in, the car he drove, the secondary credit card Sienna had used to pay for the wedding. All of it traced back to an old belief of mine that parents are supposed to support their children until they can stand on their own. My phone lit up. Messages, missed calls. Levi's name appeared again and again. I didn't open them, not to punish him, but because I didn't want this decision to turn into an argument. After breakfast, I called my lawyer, a man I'd known for years, someone who had handled very ordinary matters for my family. His voice on the other end was as calm as ever. I explained briefly. No emotion, no extra details, just the facts. You want to revoke access to the apartment and the car, he said, slowly, making sure I understood. Yes, I replied. And cancel the authorization on the secondary card, yes. There were no further questions, no moral advice. He simply said he would begin the process that same day. When the call ended, I set the phone down and felt a rare sense of clarity, like turning off a switch that had been left on for far too long. Around noon, Levi called again. This time I answered. "What are you doing?" he asked. His voice was tight, not worried, annoyed. "I'm putting my affairs back in order," I said. "You can't do this," he shot back. "Do you know what I'm dealing with today with her family?" "I do," I said. "But you don't know where I was standing yesterday." There was a short pause. Then Levi spoke faster, louder. He talked about appearances, about business partners, about how I had made a mess of everything. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't mention his mother. There was only one concern, his image falling apart. "I didn't embarrass you," I said calmly. "I just stopped covering for you." The call ended abruptly. I didn't call back. That afternoon, Sienna sent a message, very short, asking why the card no longer worked. No greeting, no concern. I didn't reply. My lawyer would handle that. Luna learned everything that evening. I told her slowly, without emphasis. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she stayed quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "You did the right thing," she said, not loudly, but with certainty. The days that followed moved faster than I expected. Legal notices were sent. Payments were stopped. Things Levi had always taken for granted began slipping out of reach. No drama, no public statements, just doors closing one by one. Levi called more often. The messages got longer. His tone shifted, from blame to pleading, then to anger. I answered a few calls, not to argue, but to confirm something important. He still talked only about what he was losing, never about what he had done. I wasn't angry. That feeling had drained away the day I stood in the hallway. What I felt now was a clear, steady exhaustion, like realizing a structure has deteriorated so badly that patching small cracks no longer makes sense. One evening, Levi said into the phone, "Do you want me to end up with nothing?" I answered without hesitation, "No. I just don't want you standing on things that were never yours." After that, I hung up. Not to end the relationship, but to end a version of it that had been wrong for far too long. That night, Luna and I sat on the hotel balcony. The sea breeze was light. I thought about how Levi had been called a golden boy by so many people, not because he was exceptional, but because there was always a foundation beneath him, quietly keeping him from falling. That foundation had now been pulled away. Not to make him collapse, but to let him, for the first time in his life, stand on his own 2 feet. 6 months passed faster than I expected. Nothing dramatic happened during that time. Just steady, quiet days, enough for a person to look back on their life without being pulled around by outside noise. Luna and I moved fully to Florida. The house that once existed only on paper became the place where we woke up every morning. The sunlight here felt gentler. The space was open. And most importantly, no one ever made us stand in a hallway. In the early days, I kept my habit of waking up early, making coffee, and sitting on the front porch. Luna planted a few small flower beds. She said it was just to keep her hands busy, but I knew it was her way of filling old empty spaces. We didn't talk much about Levi. Not because we were avoiding it, but because we both understood that some stories need time to settle before they can be spoken without pain. The money we had once planned to give, Levi, Luna, and I discussed carefully. Not in one night, but over many evenings. In the end, we agreed to start a small scholarship fund for orphan children in the area. Nothing large, nothing public, just enough to give a few kids more options. I didn't see it as a replacement for my son. I saw it as a way to redirect trust that had once been placed in the wrong place. Life slowly found its balance. I no longer felt the need to prove anything. In the afternoons I read. Luna listened to music. We ate dinner early, went to bed early. A simple rhythm, but not an empty one, until one late afternoon when the doorbell rang. I opened the door. Levi stood there. Sienna stood behind him. They both looked different, not because their clothes were cheaper, but because of how they stood. Levi no longer held his back straight. His eyes shifted. Sienna didn't look around the house. No judging, no scanning. She stood still, hands tightly clasped. I didn't speak right away. I stepped back just enough for them to stand under the porch roof. Not inside the house, not out in the sun. "Dad," Levi spoke first. His voice was low. "We're having a hard time." I nodded. "I know." No one asked how I knew. When a system collapses, its aftershocks don't need explaining. Levi talked about debt, about things he had grown used to relying on that were no longer there, about relationships that disappeared faster than he expected. Sienna didn't interrupt. She just stared at the tiles beneath her feet. "We want to borrow the house again," Levi said. "Just for a while." I looked at him, really looked. Not to judge, but to understand who I was facing. A son, or a man, saying the words "I need help" for the first time. I didn't answer immediately. I brought out 2 folding chairs from inside and placed them on the porch. I pointed to one. "Sit down first," I said. Levi sat. Sienna sat with him. I sat across from them, leaving enough space between us. "There's no room inside," I said calmly. "But there's space out here." Levi lowered his head. He understood. I didn't bring up the past, not the hallway, not the reception. I spoke only about what was clear, that this house was where his mother and I had begun again, that what had been withdrawn would not return in the same form, that any help, if given, would no longer be an unconditional safety net. "I'm not closing the door on you," I said, "but I'm not reopening the old door either." Levi stayed quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. No arguing, no begging. It was the first time I saw him accept a boundary without trying to bend it. We talked a little more, just enough to end the visit. When they stood to leave, I didn't make promises. I only said I would consider what was reasonable, not because of who they were, but because of where they were willing to stand. After they left, Luna stepped onto the porch. She didn't ask if I regretted anything. She simply placed her hand on my shoulder. I knew she understood. That night, I sat alone and thought about the question that had once echoed in my mind while I stood in the hallway: where would we stand in our son's life? The answer hadn't come back then. It came now. Slowly, clearly. We don't stand at the center of his spotlight, but we're no longer pushed to the edge either. We stand in our rightful place. Family to me is no longer a place where you fight for a seat. It's a place where everyone knows where they belong and respects where others stand. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's this: when you know how to close the wrong doors, you finally make room for the right ones to open, wide enough for peace to walk in. Thank you for staying and listening to this story until the very end. If this story made you think, please tap like to support the channel, subscribe so you don't miss the next stories, and share it so others can listen and feel it too. Thank you for giving your time to my story. I wish you and your family the peace of always finding the right place to stand in each other's lives.